So good afternoon, everybody. I think in the next couple of minutes, you will still be popping in. We will start with a short introduction, and then we will get on going with the talks and discussion. My name is Taru Sandén, and together with Ana Pires da Silva, we are moderating this fourth conversation on agroecology. Today, our theme will be living labs, first of all in the Agroecology Partnership, and then in the soil mission. I come from the Austrian Agency for Health and Food Safety, shortly AKIS, and my AKIS colleague Karin Nistler is taking care of all the technical aspects of our webinar. So in case you need any technical assistance throughout the event, please feel free to send a chat to Karin. She will be there for you. And to shortly present agroecology, this is the European Partnership on Accelerating Farming Systems Transition, Agroecology Living Labs, and Research Infrastructure. It's a common initiative between 26 member states, associated countries, and third countries, with a total of 72 partners. And together, we are carrying out this research and innovation effort. These conversations that you will now be attending will be one of the steps that we are taking towards strengthening the AKIS, the so-called agricultural knowledge and innovation system. We want to strengthen it to enable agroecological transition. And this we can do by facilitating linkages between living labs and research infrastructures across Europe, maybe even beyond. Let's see how many of you will be from outside of Europe. These online conversations will be taking place monthly throughout the 7-year partnership. We will only take a little summer break, and we hope to enable this kind of mobilization of agroecology actors wherever they are in Europe. So we will always be organizing these conversations online. Today, we again have 2 speakers. We have Gerald Schwarz from Germany and Cristina Carlos from Portugal. They will introduce you the topic of living labs in Agroecology Partnership and in the soil mission. We will first listen to the individual presentations, so please don't interrupt with questions during the presentations. And then you can all join for discussion. After each presentation, you will have a couple of minutes to ask questions. And then at the end, we have about half an hour to discuss both presentations. This conversation is also being recorded. I hope this is okay for all of you. If not, please do raise your hand. I see no hands. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Gerald. Gerald, please go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Tara. Thanks a lot for the opportunity to have the presentation here on living labs. Just let me share my screen. Okay. Can you just quickly confirm that you can see this in the presentation mode? Is that all right?
Very good.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to talk a bit about agroecology living labs. And well, this will not be an all-encompassing summary of how we see agroecology living labs and what we do with agroecology living labs in the partnership. I think that would go beyond the 10 minutes. And I think we will have different sessions, different conversations on that throughout the process. So what I thought I'm going to talk about a little bit, maybe just also with the aim of triggering a bit of discussions, is to reflect a little bit on characteristics of agroecology living labs, So what are particular aspects of agroecology living labs? And then maybe briefly also reflecting on the potential on these kind of living labs and contributing to agroecology transitions, and with that to maybe pick up a few issues that require further work and will then also be picked up in the work of the partnership, both within the consortium and I suppose by the projects that are also financed. So maybe just let me start with a few general points on introducing living labs. So basically, living labs are open innovation arrangements. They're built on a set of core principles like co-creation, the embedding in a real life environment, and to do the work, the co-creation and the innovation processes together with users. So basically, we can see living labs as kind of user-centered open innovation ecosystems that basically function in those kind of real-life environments. And importantly, integrate research into the innovation process. So research is quite an important part of the living labs as together with the innovation processes in the living labs. It's about different values that are co-created in living labs through iterative co-creation processes with really a diversity of actors, also depending, of course, on the context and application of the living labs. Participants can be from a range of different types of actors, including practitioners, academics, public-private actors, etc. There's quite a bit of different understandings and interpretations also about what living labs are in the literature and also in the applications, with living labs being a research method or living labs being a research project, and in contrary, different views on living labs being rather innovation projects supported by research, closer to the definition also from Hussein above. So basically, when we talk about living labs, we could say that in a way we talk about, on the one hand, about research methodology, but also going beyond that and see living labs as a kind of infrastructure that really involves the participation and brings together various stakeholders in the research, but also in the development and innovation processes that are important in that context. But beyond that, we can also see living labs as institutions, or at least living labs can basically develop or evolve into institutions that really last beyond the scope of a particular project. We have it quite often, in particular with the Horizon Europe programs, that we have calls, they're project funded, and then the projects have the task to set up a living lab. But of course, in terms of the co-creation process and the empowerment and the long-term co-learning, it's important also that there is further development evolving into institutions that support those processes. There have been various attempts to create typologies of living labs according to the different sectors they are used, that they are applied in, or the kind of key driving actor. And I think for the purpose here of talking about agroecology living labs and the kind of characteristics of agroecology living labs, it's good to start with agroecosystem living labs, basically work done here by the International Agroecosystem Living Lab Working Group about 5 years ago, defining agroecosystem living labs, that then was further expanded on also by McPhee et al. In terms of identifying different features of agroecosystem living labs. For example, the focus on the adoption of innovation, in particular here aiming at sustainability and resilience of agriculture, and with innovations in particular focusing on technological innovations, management practices, agriculture practices, how to improve those. And also agroecosystems living labs are place-based, but not bounded to a particular city or rural region, because the agroecosystems, of course, intersect with other systems. Basically, this in a way provided the foundation then for the work done in the Already project, one of the projects preparing the Agroecology Partnership and starting to look at characteristics of agroecology living labs, what are the features of agroecology living labs, and really building strongly on the concept and features of agroecosystem living labs, with the strong local embeddedness, the kind of place-based nature, but then also for agroecology living labs, the large diversity of their origins, of where and how they have been developed and why, and in particular also the higher heterogeneity and intensity of the knowledge and innovations needed and produced in those agroecology living labs. And those kind of features were then also adapted in a way by the Agroecology Partnership in the grant agreement as the kind of starting point for further work on agroecology living labs. And what I would just like to do now in that short presentation is to explore a bit more and expand a bit more on characteristics of agroecology living labs, and in a way of how these might differ in comparison to the agroecosystem living labs. So on that slide, it's just the kind of different dimension of characteristics that we looked at: aims, activities, participants, and context and scales. And those were also the kind of dimensions that were defined for agroecosystem living labs. And when we think about agroecology living labs in terms of the aims and linking the exploration or the discussion here, and also to the concept of agroecology transitions, to Gliessmann's levels of agroecology transition, then in terms of agroecology living labs, really the point is to focus on transformative change in relation to the principles of agroecology. So when it comes to the aims of agroecology living labs, the point here would be that these would focus on, in particular, achieving transformative change in advancing agroecology transitions in relating to those principles. It's about the kind of co-creation of systems redesign and systems perspective. That is maybe also a particularly important aspect for agroecology living labs. And maybe also to highlight here that when we talk about agroecology and agroecology living labs, in that context, of course, human and social values of agroecology transitions are really important. So there is a reasonable assumption then when we talk about agroecology living labs, it's not only about technological innovation, it needs to go beyond technological innovation to also address social innovations, organizational innovations. So basically the different values of agroecology transition. There's really a high diversity of actors that can play an important role in agroecology living labs. And with that, the higher heterogeneity that I talked about earlier. And maybe another potential difference to highlight here, that with the agroecology living labs and thinking about the transformative change in agroecology transitions, we also talk about agroecosystems and applications at agroecosystem level when it's about agroecology living labs. But there is another level here, and that is the food system level when we think about agroecology transitions. That plays an important role here, and that is maybe in a stronger focus for agroecology living labs compared to agroecosystem living labs, if one want to implement this distinction. Pardon me. So maybe having those points in mind on kind of potential distinctions and differentiations of agroecology living labs and agroecosystem living labs, and what are potential characteristics of agroecology living labs, linking those to the concepts of agroecology transition, the different principal elements, and the different levels of agroecology transition. Of course, in terms of the potential of agroecology living labs, the key aspect here is really the co-creation of knowledge, bringing the actor together with the co-creation processes in fostering the innovation for the transformative change. And that links back also to what we heard last month about the services provided by the research infrastructures feeding into the co-creation of knowledge that basically then also facilitate the innovation process in living labs. Now, looking at the different characteristics and then how we could potentially, I put a little question mark behind that, we can discuss that later, see agroecology living labs here in the context of agroecology transition concepts is that we have agroecology living labs at agroecosystems level that in particular basically focus on transformative change to redesign the agroecosystems for improved resilience, diversity, those kind of elements and principles that relate in particular to the agroecosystem, and that we also think about and consider agroecology living labs at the food system level, and basically here the focus on really transformative change towards sustainable and equitable food systems, and in particular the kind of alternative local food systems bringing together producers and consumers in those systems. In addition to that, we also see quite a number of living labs that's really about co-creating knowledge to implement innovations in specific agroecological practices. In a way, this is also a lot what the agroecosystem living labs are about. But then, of course, if we would define agroecology living labs in a true sense of the agroecology concept with the aim of transformative change, a question is to be raised if these are still in terms of terminology, agroecology living labs, when it is about innovations in specific agroecological practices, but maybe not with a particular systemic perspective about redesigning agroecosystems. But still, of course, you can also argue that those kind of living labs really contribute also to agroecology transitions by raising awareness, knowledge on agroecological practice, by engaging actors in co-creation of knowledge on agroecological practices that eventually will be useful to further accelerate and advance in transition. So the points raised here is about the use of the term of agroecology living labs, really to reflect the contribution to agroecology transition, with a focus on transformative change, with a little question mark for discussion maybe. But then, of course, also acknowledging on the one hand, there are gray areas in terms of assessing or evaluating living labs, and also in particular keeping in mind the kind of dynamic nature of living labs. Living labs can evolve also in the iterative co-creation process in terms of the activities that the living labs are doing. So that's something, pardon me, that's important to keep in mind. Equally, the importance of engaging with conventional farmers with the ambition to initiate transition, that they are also considered in the process and also are engaged in the living labs. That's an important aspect here as well. I'm just trying to move some windows here, sorry. And but overall, there's maybe an argument, and I think this is also what we are still working on in the partnership, to be a bit clearer about the term agroecology living labs and really to define the term agroecology living labs. And maybe there's also a reflection or a discussion about how useful is the labeling of agroecology living labs in addition to other labels that already exist, be it living labs at food systems level, living labs at agroecosystem levels, and maybe also just a consideration of, in a way, of how many labels of living labs are being helpful in the end.
Gerald,
just
we would
to come to an end. Yeah,
yes,
I think. Yeah,
yeah, you have maximum 1 more minute.
Okay, I will be quick. Thanks, Taro. So to come to an end, just a few quick issues that impact on the contribution of living labs and agroecology transition that are then also further picked up in the work and the partnership. Of course, a particular strength of living labs is addressing complex challenges of transformative change with really all the different views of different actors. So in a way, addressing gaps and strengthening the AKIS and agroecology transition. But that's an important aspect because there's quite some investment from all the actors involved in living labs that require justification through the complexity of the challenges. The enabling settings are really important. And then issues to consider are the boundaries of the living labs that are really of relevance and basically reflect the actor networks in agroecology transitions, questions on the governance of living labs, issues in relation to roles and power relations of actors in living labs, also the roles of researchers, and the need for methods really that foster the co-creation processes. And just to close, also further issues then are the role of actors from outside the agriculture sectors, how they impact on the innovation processes, and the role of the empirical research and the research services of the infrastructures that we heard about a month ago, and how to integrate effectively the research infrastructures into the innovation processes of the living labs. And of course, there are a range of operational issues from data management and ownership, just in one example, that will be addressed in the partnership in the coming years, and that we can pick up in further conversations here in the coming months and years. And with that, I stop. And sorry for being a bit longer. Thanks, Taro. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much, Gerald. Very interesting presentation. If you have questions directly to Gerald, you can already write some of your questions in the chat. We will move forward to the next speaker so that we will have enough time for open discussion. So Gerald, don't be afraid. You will get questions in about 15 minutes. Thank you very much. Our second speaker today will be Cristina Carlos, and we will now be diving into one of the principles of agroecology, namely soil health, and how soil health is being addressed in living labs. Cristina, I think you are already online.
Yes, I am. Hello, Teru. Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting us to share some of short experience, because we started 5 months ago our project. I will share my screen.
Yes,
if
the floor is
possible.
yours.
I don't know if you can you see my screen. Yeah.
Yes, it's perfect. We can see it.
Okay, thank you. Try to remove. Okay. So Taru asked me to share about our experience with living labs related with soil health. And this is our project, Living Soil. It was recently approved. It was the first 5 project, one of the 5 projects approved during the first call of this soil mission, Co-Create Solutions for Soil Health in Living Labs. The concept of the living labs related here is the concept that came from the soil mission initiative. So I will share some of our experience. The project started, as I said before, in June, and we are in the 5th month of the project. It will last for 45 months. And the goal of our project is to co-create solutions with the growers, with the farmers, about how to enhance the soil health of 5 permanent crops. These 5 permanent crops were chosen according to their importance in terms of economic, social, and cultural importance in the EU space. So we include here the vineyards, the vine sector, the olive sector, the apple orchard sector, the chestnut, and the hazelnuts. These are the 5 permanent crops that are included in our project. And the main is well, we are, I will speak later about the partners because it's a big, huge project. It involves close to 50 partners. So it's a big challenge to coordinate this kind of initiative because, and in 5 countries that we will include in this initiative, we are collaborating between 5 countries. But these 5 countries, these 5 living labs that we will set up or we are setting up have different soil challenge. One of the main soil challenge was to reduce erosion, improve soil structure, reduce the impacts of the intensive use of fertilizers and pesticides, increase water storage, enhance soil biodiversity, and the overall resilience of these soils. Where are located these 5 living labs? Here we have a map of the space where we are located. We have the first, the 𝐚𝐠𝐫𝐲𝐭𝐫𝐢𝐧𝐠 living lab is located in the north of Portugal and in Galicia. We are, in this case, a transnational living lab. The second living lab, the first living lab include vineyards and olives, two permanent crops. In the south of Spain, we have the Andalusian living lab that include olives managed by the University of Jaén. Ours in Portugal and Galicia is managed by the University of Trás-os-Montes e Alto Douro, UTAD, my university. Then we have the living lab located in France that also includes 2 regions in France, the Beaujolais and Loire-Vallée, and it's managed by the IFV, the French Institute for Wine, and includes only vineyards, okay? In this case, only 1 crop also. In the north of Italy, we have the northwestern Italy, Piemonte, includes 3 permanent crops, vineyards, chestnut, and hazelnuts. And in Poland, we have the 𝐿𝐵𝐺𝐸 living lab that includes only apple orchards. So these 5 living labs have different soil challenge. And here a summary of the 5 living labs with the crops included. And these 5 living labs will work together, exchanging because some of the crops, we have the vineyards located in several living labs, have different climate, have different soil conditions. And the goal is to exchange among us about involving in each of these living labs the quadruple helix. So we have the public authorities, the university, the business, the producer, the civil society, exchanging, identifying the main soil health problems in each one, and the solutions that will be applied in a co-creation process with the farmers, identifying this challenge and how they can or they are already implementing some solutions to solve this to solve these problems to enhance soil health. So this main soil challenge that we're identifying during the proposal phase, as you can see, in each living labs were different. One in common, it's the need to improve soil literacy in society. We also, most of them have identifying the prevention of erosion. And of course, the other challenge, reduce soil pollution, enhancing soil structure and soil biodiversity, and so on. These are the main partners that are involved in each living labs of these 5. We have also with us 8 associated partners. They are mainly political partners or service providers. And in total, we have 50 partners involved in this one. I will give you the example of our particular case in the 𝐿𝐵𝐺𝐸𝐺𝐸 living lab, in which we take advantage of previous experience with other project community, because our university, for instance, UTAD, is a university where we give with base agrarian, so we are very close to the farmers. We developed in the past several projects about I will give you later some examples. So we take advantage of these relations, these previous relations, also with the University of Porto and University of Vigo, and involving the partners that were involved in previous experience, and also involving the Wine and Olive Association, Farms Association in our case. So in this case, in this living lab, we will set up 20 experimental sites with the active participation of the farmers, and with the potential lighthouses that were identified, and in which we will test these innovative solutions. So here, in our case, these are the relations, the partners that were involved. And we have some horizontal partners, service providers of seeds providers, and other partners that we will together in transversal role with the other living labs also. So in our case, we have vineyards from the Douro demarcated region, olive groves from the Trás-os-Montes region, and in the sites in the part of Galicia, mainly the vineyards, that these crops share similar soil problems. And we have already organized some events. I will mention later some, well, I will show some experience. Here's some photos about the soil conditions, of the crops that we involved. And these are the main challenge in our case. Erosion was the main threat identified in most, but in particular in our case, because in the Douro conditions, the Douro demarcated conditions, because of the steep slopes that vineyards are installed, this is the main threat for us. This is one example of after a strong rain event, what happens with our Douro River. As you can see, this is in particular our main challenge. So our project is mostly, I won't go into detail in each work package, of course, this is not the goal of this presentation. Only I will focus mainly on the work package 3 and 4, because it's the regional implementation of the living labs and the setup of the monitoring system that we will implement in our project. So we are in the phase of characterizing the challenge of each living lab, organizing these co-creation workshops with the farmers. We made our first one last week here in the Luso-Galician Living Lab. And because the partner in charge of these tasks is in our site, we University of Porto gave the methodology for the other living labs to establish the same methodology. It works very well. We develop a participatory methodology. We put together more or less 45 persons working on this identification of soil challenge, and it was very, very good to now information is under treatment to go on the further initiatives. In work package 4, we will identify first, we will identify the experimental sites, in which one we will implement the practices. And after, we will implement a monitoring system to analyze several parameters of soil related physicochemical, metagenomic, pesticides, erosion, and so on. And the objective is to test the impact on these experimental sites, to have first the baseline before applying this technique, and after, during the project and at the end of the project, to test the impact of these different practices that some of them were already identified on this workshop that we made last week. And I put here some examples. Test different amendments, test different cover crops, test different cover crop management, how we should manage cover crops under such climate conditions, the mulching, the reduced tillage, and so on. Also comparing different systems of production, organic and integrated production, and how can these practices or systems of production have impact on soil health parameters. So here are the, in summary. Yes, yes.
Just a short notice of time. It would be, you have 1 more minute.
Okay, okay. I'm just finishing. Just put some photos here as to highlight the what is under study, the kind of soil management that we have here that will be under study in our living labs. And just to make a short, this is a recent article publishing it is very important that we validate the benefit of implementing these practices under different climate, different soil conditions. Because in these articles, for example, this highlight that considering these conditions, these different conditions, for instance, the cover crop management can have different impacts. And if the practices have a negative impact in crop, the farmers won't apply it. That's why in some climate conditions, the farmers are afraid of applying certain practices that can compete with the crop. So we need to engage the farmers to have them on this discussion, why they don't apply some practices, to understand their motivation and to validate the benefits of applying on soil health parameter, but also on crops. That's what we will do on our living labs, okay? And I think this is all. I just put some slides at the end to highlight the previous experience that we have in some other projects with them, but I'm just finishing. Thank you for this time.
Thank you very much, Christina. Very interesting to get an example of one of the first living labs that they are on soil health. Thank you very much. And now we would be ready indeed to open the floor for questions. So Anna and I will be moderating the questions. You can simply raise your hand or write your comment into the chat, and we will pick up questions from the chat then. So if you really want to ask your question first, please go ahead.
Okay,
while you are waiting,
one question. Yeah, we have one question, but to Christina.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you, in order to avoid merely weather effects, plan to keep a control pilot at each site over the years when implementing the new practices?
This is a very... Can I, Taru?
Yes, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Thank you for this question. This is a very important aspect that we discussed in the previous, the first month of the project, because in this kind of soil mission orientations, we didn't find, we just know that we need to set up the experimental sites in real life conditions. So it has to be in business vineyards, not in experimental vineyards designed for a scientific purpose, because at the end of the living labs, the grower should keep these vineyards with the same approach to have them as lighthouses if the practices will be identified having a positive effect. So how can we solve this, avoiding to have an experimental scientific design as we are used to have on the university, in the research center? So we discussed that among the partnership, and we decided to we will have an experimental site where the innovative practices were not applied, and not as a control, but the control will be the business as usual vineyards located in the proximity of this experimental site. And at the end, the goal is to evaluate before applying at baseline, before applying the innovative practices, during the project, after the project, to integrate, to evaluate how the soil parameters evaluate during this period Of course, we will have an impact of the climate conditions of the year. We are aware of that. But as the soil mission indicates this kind of need to have the experimental sites located in real life, in real life conditions of the vineyards, of the olive, chestnut, we should work with this kind of methodology. All the living labs will work with this concept.
Okay.
I don't know if I fully answer to the question, but this will give a huge discussion, yes.
Thank you,
Because
Christina.
the scientists would like to have a control, of course, but considering the number of samples that we have and so on, what is a control? What is a control? For us, the control is the business as usual. It's difficult to have on nature. It's not a laboratory. We should have the business as usual as control, and the other, it will be the place where the innovative practice will be implemented. Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much, Christina. I think it was just fine. Well, we have another question. According to Gerald's presentation, food systems living labs can be considered agroecology living labs? It's a question.
You want me to jump in on that?
Do you want me to repeat?
No, I think,
no,
that's okay. I wasn't quite sure if I should respond now.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for the question. Well, not to create a misunderstanding here. I didn't mean to suggest just because a living lab operates at the food system level, it becomes automatically, it should be automatically considered an agroecology living lab. I think at the food system level, you can also have living labs that deal with other with innovation processes on other issues that maybe do not relate to agroecology directly. So I think the importance there is really that the living labs at the food systems level still, of course, focus on the areas of transformative change that relate to the principles or elements of agroecology. So it needs to be related to agroecology and the transformative changes at the food systems level. And not just because it is an open innovation arrangement at food systems level that it automatically becomes agroecology living lab. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Okay, is there any more questions? We don't have any more questions in the chat, but maybe someone else wants to raise more questions.
I would have one question for maybe both to Gerald and Christina. As we saw in Christina's presentation, there is quite an impressive number of partners involved in all of the living labs. And when thinking about the longevity and sustainability of the living labs, how do you ensure that all partners are on board in 10 years' time?
The question is for me. I can start perhaps.
Yes, for you specifically,
yes.
for your project, and for Gerald, in maybe what kind of structures are in place, what kind of help is in place in supporting this sustainability?
Yes, this is a very important question. We have a work package that is dedicated to business models to support the sustainability of the living labs after the end of the project, because the goal of this kind of living labs, it was mentioned on the soil mission initiatives that we participate when we set up the proposal, that the goal of this living lab is to, because in our case, how we constitute a living lab. We use the connections that we have already on the field before, but to set up, to continue these connections lasting after the end of the project, we need to find solutions business models that can support the growers to keep this kind of experimental sites that will hopefully transform in lighthouses at the end of the project, and how this can be supported economically. Well, our goal is to find some solutions, some technological solutions, some identifying measures that can, political measures that can support on the future the implementations, or with the political measures or so on, to help this experimental site and these farmers to keep on time. I think it's the main challenge of these projects. It's the sustainability in the future, actually. This is the main. Of course, it's a big challenge to put everyone to working on the same level. We are on the 5th month and we already identified these different ways of working in different countries. It's very important to have so many partners sharing the same methodology, of course, and as you know, the scientific partners normally speak a language that normally the farmers don't, most of the time, don't have the same approach, because the farmers are more centered in the crop. It's normal, it's their economic sustainability. So most of the time, when we speak with the farmers, we understand this kind of approach, that they are more focused on the crop health and not so much on the soil health. And this project should be mainly focused on soil health, of course, not forgetting the crop, because if the crop is affected, they will not apply these solutions, okay? So we need to find communication channels and so on to solve this kind of problems that we are identifying. Thank you. I don't know if I answer clearly the
thank
goal,
you,
but
Christina.
Christina, there are another question for you. Are farmers able to participate in your living lab? And if so, do they get funding from the project for their participation, or is it mainly agricultural companies that participate?
Yes, you know, our farmers, I speak from my experience in Portugal. Most of farmers have a high level IH, and this is so complicated in terms of bureaucratic and administrative issues, that they are not able to participate, this kind of farmers, in this project. So what we have is farmers, companies, wine companies, olive companies, chestnut companies, growers associations that are here with the goal, because the big farmers, the big companies have this kind of money to implement and have a risk. If it doesn't work, it's okay, because they are innovating, they are trying to find solutions to apply. If it works okay, this kind of companies and the farmers association can disseminate, and the goal of this project is also to disseminate to the small farmers through the lighthouses, okay? The lighthouses have exactly this goal, to be a place where the smaller farmers can go to the big farmers to understand how to implement these practices for their farmers, for their farms. This is very important because I have this question in the first month of the project. Why didn't you include the small farmers? The small farmers don't have the capacity to participate directly on this. Unfortunately, it's too much administrative issues, and but they will have the results of the project through the community of practice that will be implemented in our project. They will receive information for sure. We will organize these workshops with them and the demonstration days to show them the benefits of the practices implemented in the big farms, experimental sites, lighthouses.
Thank you, Christina. I think there was still the question to Gerald as well. What kind of support mechanisms you see for this kind of insurance of the longevity of living labs? How to make sure that the living labs are not only there for 5 years, but they stay there for a decade or more?
Thanks, Daro. That's not an easy question to answer, I think. So I don't think I have the solution for that. Maybe just a few points to consider. Because I think one of the points raised it is about the different values of the actors involved in the living labs, and that maybe they have other challenges or other objectives than soil health or whatever the living lab is trying to achieve from the research project point of view. And maybe that's a common issue that we are facing, I think, with the Horizon projects, because we are approaching the living labs, of course, from the research project perspective, and we are already having a set of research questions that we have defined in the grant agreement, and with that we go out to the actors on the ground, and then we do the engagement, and we identify, well, this is in the best case, well, in a good case, it's partly compatible, but in some cases, I think it's not compatible because there are different interests. And I think in a kind of cooperation process with the living labs, ideally, we would have the flexibility then to adjust the questions and the topics of the co-creation and the innovation that we want to achieve according to the different values and expected outcomes and objectives of the different actors. But that flexibility, of course, we often don't have within the grant agreements when we come from a research project perspective. So I think with the living lab as an approach for innovation, it's important that we basically have that flexibility when we start with the process. And that's something also then to discuss and acknowledge with the funders of the research projects, that basically that there needs to be more room for flexibility, but also to consider maybe living labs also from a point of view that it is not the research project or the research community initiating the living lab, but it's the actors on the ground initiating the initiative of a living lab by basically having identified a set of problems and challenges they are facing, and then reaching out to the researchers and forming that collective, basically then that turns into a living lab. So I think it's really about ensuring in the long term that the values, I think, of the actors are basically reflected in the activities and in the objective and the vision of the overall living lab there. I think that's an important point. In terms of other solutions, I think as part of the work that we are doing in the partnership, methodological guidance on those co-creation processes, on how to do co-creation processes, in particular also with larger and more diverse groups, that's something that we will be working on. But I suppose an important element there could also be then to think about the governance structure of the living lab, and maybe to review together with the actors in the living labs also who actually is an actor and who is a stakeholder, and how do those different roles align, and what kind of engagement is the most effective way of doing those transdisciplinary processes. Because if we have large groups with very diverse settings of stakeholders, actors, maybe there are also different levels of engagement, depending on, again, the joint objectives, I suppose. And that actually would be a question that I also was in my mind about the examples, Christina, that you showed in your project, which are really interesting. I was wondering a bit about the governance structure in your living labs on how you on how the living labs are organized in terms of the engagements, how that is organized, who is coordinating that, are there subgroups, are there, can you maybe say a few words on that without putting too much pointing the finger to you, but that would be interesting.
I don't know if, yes, of course, I'm glad to share a few words about that. We have a mixed governance model that were identified during the proposal. We should do that. And now we are discussing the models of governance of each living lab. And they are not the same because we are different. In each living lab are different from each other, and we are working on the work package 2 on that, on the living lab governance. In our case, UTAD, I am coordinating this project, and we have decided to form an executive board that includes the work package leaders, because we should do that because of the implementation of tasks, of course, of the project, and in which we include also the living lab leaders. We call that living lab leaders. It's the person that should implement, participate on the work package, working also on the work package, the adapting what is expected in each living lab. And in the case of the living labs that have 2 regions, in our case, Luso-Galician and French side, because they have 2 regions separated by more than 500 kilometers. So we should have also persons that are in charge for implementing the tasks, the setting up of the solutions on the field and so on. Different persons. So we are still identifying this particularity of each living labs. And we identified already some risks about that. We should do that quickly, very quickly, to understand how we should implement, because it's very important to adapt this tool to understand who really take decisions, who can adapt the process in each regions. Well, I don't know if I can share more information, but it's at least it was identified so on until now.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Gerald, as well. I think these are very important thoughts when thinking of how to run a living lab, how to establish a living lab, how to let it live. Because, of course, as Christina already was mentioning, different stakeholders do speak different language. As Gerald mentioned, different stakeholders do have different values. We also do have different ideas. What is soil health? What is an innovative solution to make soils healthy? And the more stakeholders we have in a living lab, the more ideas we also have, and the more emotions we also have. There might be some issues that are very close to heart, and those do need to be discussed. And maybe this, like the whole setting up, figuring out what is the goal, what are the means to get to that goal, do need quite some discussion, quite some active dialogue, and probably there is really a time that needs to be dedicated for that. I think in the chat there is one wonderful example as well. So you can find a link to a project. We will unfortunately not be able to take more questions, but please go and have a look at the chat. And I'm just looking. Yeah, there is also still a comment to you, Gerald. So please still have a look on the chat. It's getting close to 3 o'clock, so I would like to take a moment to thank Gerald and Christina for their excellent talks, for your openness to discuss the topic. Thank you. And also thank you for all the questions that the audience have been sending. Please feel free also to contact Gerald or Christina if you want to discuss further the individual presentations. I'll be happy to be in between if you need contact information. We will continue with the conversations at the end of November. So you can already put in your calendars the 27th of November. Would be great to see you then as well. And for now, thank you very much for participating, and see you in a month.
Thank you.
Okay. And someone is asking if we are going to share the PowerPoints. So
we will be sharing the recording. So the recording will be online on the Agroecology Partnership YouTube, as well as on the Agroecology webpage. There is an home part for conversations, and the whole recording will be available there.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.